Hello viewers, welcome to this tutorial. So in this we are learning how to return more values within a function. Okay, so let's assume we have a function. If you don't really know this, go back to the previous tutorial. We learn about return, how to return values and every other stuff. So we have a function called names from function. Okay, so yeah, names from function. Alright, to make things short, I'm not going to be receiving input from user. I just want to emphasize on the actual point. So just imagine we receive input from the user and we want to return them. Okay, so we have let's see, we have several variables. Okay, value, first value. Okay, first value equals Prince. Alright, and we have second value equals John, and we have third value equals Grace. Okay, so just imagine we've received all this input from the user and we want to return each one of them. So there are many ways we can do them. We can say first value, second value, third value. So you can return several values. Then if we return them by receiving values, okay, equals names. So all those values will be passed into the variable we have right here. Okay, so if we print it, receiving, and we run the code, we have each one of them. Okay, so you can, it's possible you can return several values within them, and there are other ways of doing it. Or we can choose to put all of them within a list. All right, and say names, okay, equals, then we can choose to do the Prince, or we can simply say first value, second value, third value. Okay, or we can choose to put the names in the list, because this variables contains the names. So if we put the variables within, I know I've not really said this within my tutorial, but the variables consist of the names. So if you put if you don't put, if you put so if you put the name of the variable within the list, the values assigned to them will just be put within the list. So this is how to do it. Okay, and you can combine other single values as well. You can say hello, okay, because that one has to be in quotation mark, because that one is not a variable, it's a string. Okay, so basically this is how it works. Then if we have to return, then we need to return the names. All right, we need to return the names, and if we run the code, we have it as a list. All right, but there is a difference if we return, just check something out. Check this out, check this out, check this out, check this out. All right, so if I return first value, and I print the type of first value, okay, receiving, now it will be a string. Okay, what happens here is that any value I return is sent to its default. So if I return an integer, the type is an integer. Any value I return goes as such, unlike the input function, it returns all of them into string. But there is some kind of difference if I return a group of names. All right, if I return a list, it comes as a list. If I return anything, it comes as that thing. But if you return multiple values without it being a list, it's just a list of string or a list of integers. Just look at this. I have first value, second value, third value, or even if you have hello and all other things, okay, not a variable, anything. If I assign group of variables or group of characters to the return, what happens is it changes it to a tuple. Check it out. Now in the previous tutorial, when I was dealing with looping, I made mention of tuple as an iterable. So a list is an iterable, a tuple is an iterable, and I said we're going to meet tuple by the way. So this is what is a tuple. Okay, so anytime you return, now a tuple is just like a list, but there are differences in terms of mutability. Okay, and I'll explain them in tutorials to come, so don't worry, I have no problem with that. So a tuple is basically the same. You can do anything you want to do with a tuple. So what happens is the receiving values now becomes a tuple. And let me just make you understand, you can do everything you know with a tuple. The same thing you do with your if statement for current, or your for loop for current value in receiving values. Okay, print current value. So they are basically the same. You can do anything you want to do with them. So just like the list, but there is a little difference, and also in terms of mutability, which I will explain later. So no problem with that. But if you are not conversant with a tuple and you want to make it a list, and then just bring your open and close square bracket here, because it's the open and the close square bracket that shows it is a list. Now in a nutshell, you can choose to declare the list here and return the list, or you can choose to put each one of them within this to make them a list, so you return it to the value. So there are so many ways you can do them. So if you're accessing them, this one now becomes a list. So you have to know how to slide through the list. Go back to my previous tutorial about list. You have to know how to call the individual values within a list so you use them. So this is kind of simple, but I just want you to emphasize on you can return several values, and anytime you return several values, if they don't have a specific class type, like if it is not a list, and if there's not any other thing, it makes it a tuple. Okay, but if it is a variable or if it's a group of characters, like you have hello, all right, if you have hello and you have one, okay, it just becomes a tuple. Okay, so receiving values, then we have all these ones. Just a minute. Okay, all right, so if I print type of receiving values, okay, it's still a tuple. So either I receive characters or a variable, it converts them as one to a tuple, which you can access them as perfect as a list by using your indexing and every other stuff. So if I want to print this one, I can simply go and be like print receiving index 0. Okay, and I have index 0 as hello. So it's the same thing as a list, but there are a little bit differences. So if you want to, if you think you have a problem with the tuple, just convert it to a list. But if not, tuple works perfectly. So thanks for viewing. Subscribe, like the video if they are good for you, and hit that bell for more updates. Thank you for